I want to talk to you today about a sickness in our political discourse. It is the inability to admit when we are wrong. This is not just about personal pride. It's really about how we engage with each other, how we respond to facts, how we grow and advance as a society. And across the spectrum, we have created a culture where admitting a mistake is seen as a weakness, and it's paralyzing our ability to move forward. I'm going to start with myself here. I used to be firmly against nuclear power. Like many on the left, I thought it was dangerous, environmentally harmful, not worth the risk if we were to start building new nuclear. And then I dove into the actual data on safety, on emissions, on efficiency. And I realized that my belief was not as solid as I thought. I accepted uncritically 20 years ago things that people were telling me without researching for myself whether nuclear power was the boogeyman that I was being told. And the truth is that new nuclear, the technology that would be used today to build new nuclear power, is one of the safest technologies in terms of human toll per energy provided. Now, I have not become a nuclear energy advocate. I barely talk about it on the show. I think we need to move to truly green, renewable energy. But I would be open to using new nuclear technology as a bridge to get to green, renewable energy. It may even be the case that the time it would take to get new nuclear online wouldn't even make sense. It would just delay us going to true renewables. Fine, then don't do it. But my view on the safety of nuclear changed. You mention this to some people on the left, and they see you as the devil. Another example. For years, I believed that Medicare for all was the only one true viable solution to fix our broken healthcare system. But as I learned more about the push and pull between quality, access, and cost, and I looked at the systems of other countries, I realized other countries have achieved far better healthcare outcomes and access and lower cost than we have in the United States without turning to Medicare for all. For example, countries like Germany or the Netherlands use hybrid systems that are balancing public and private insurance. They outperform the US in almost every metric at a lower cost. I'm still in favor of Medicare for all as a great solution, but it's not the only one. My view changed, it expanded, it grew. Another example is cancel culture. And early on, I was really defensive anytime there would be a criticism of it, dismissing the concept as just another right-wing talking point. There's no such thing. But over time, I have seen that I don't love the term cancel culture, but there is a degree to which authoritarian leftists can alienate people, suppress meaningful dialogue, and exclude others with purity tests. I don't pretend that it's the overwhelming, dominating left, but it exists. And to the extent that it exists, I don't want to shut people down. I want to engage with them. And I don't want to push people away with that authoritarian perspective. I don't go out there saying, oh, the left has done all this, it's terrible. No, but to the extent that it exists, rather than being defensive, I now just say, yeah, it exists. I believe it's the fringe of the left. I'm against it. That's not the leftism that I recognize. These realizations were maybe not super easy to come by initially, because in general, there is a belief that admitting you're wrong is a failing of some kind. But I think that it's essential, because clinging to bad ideas out of pride or fear really doesn't help anybody. And unfortunately, that's exactly what dominates our political discourse today. And now as we start the new Trump era, I think it's particularly important, especially because not only should we recognize it on our side, the MAGA movement is filled with it. Trump's presidency was filled with broken promises, tax cuts that only help the rich, trade wars that hurt American farmers, a wall that never got built, an Israeli-Palestinian conflict that was going to be solved by Jared in the first year and it never got solved. And yet millions of voters doubled down and supported Trump again in 2020 and again in 2024. Why? One reason, we talked about the failings of the Harris campaign, okay? One reason is because admitting that it was a bad idea to put Trump in power the first time and voting for someone else this time would admit that they were wrong. And for many people, Trump became a part of their identity. Rejecting Trump felt like rejecting themselves. And this refusal to grapple with mistakes creates a feedback loop where if you criticize Trump, you are dismissed as fake news, no matter how overwhelming the evidence. So the left is not immune. MAGA is certainly not immune. I'll talk more broadly about some slogans that others on the left bought into. Defund the police, okay? The intention behind it, reform law enforcement to better serve communities. Awesome. I've got a 12-point plan for doing exactly that. The messaging wasn't good. It wasn't even that the left acknowledged or necessarily bought into defund the police. It was just a slice. But that messaging alienated moderates. It scared independents. It handed Republicans a talking point that they could weaponize. After it became clear that defund the police was a damaging slogan, the people who liked that slogan often refused to acknowledge that it was a mistake. Instead, they doubled down. They said, no, people just don't understand it or whatever. That's not useful defensiveness. Reform the police, which is what I've been advocating for from the beginning. Sometimes it might mean reducing funding. Sometimes it might mean we actually need more funding for better training and alternative responses to just a typical armed response. That made a lot more sense. And so the point I'm getting to here in general is that the inability to admit fault hurts everybody. On the right, it means, they end up denying basic facts about COVID and tax policy and climate change. On the left, it means we should acknowledge when a well-intentioned idea isn't working. And the result is a political discourse that ends up frozen in place. Neither side is willing to grow or adjust. It's not both sides stuff. It's very different on left and right, but it does exist on left and right. How do we fix it? We need to normalize changing your mind. It should not be seen as a sign of weakness, but it should rather be seen as evidence of intellectual growth when you change your mind. We need to celebrate people who admit they were wrong. When it's a politician or a pundit or a voter, we should say, that's awesome. You got more information and you revised your view. And we just need a culture that better values humility over pride. Now, I do think it's important to mention, I am not talking about praising people who do these political 180s. I've had an awakening, Dave Rubin or whoever else, for clicks and grift, okay? That is not what I am saying we should praise here. If we want better politics, we should reward people for doing the hard thing, which is saying, hey, I made a mistake. I'm going to try to do better. Imagine if more MAGA voters could say, hey, you know what? Trump wasn't the right choice, but now I see that. Republicans against Trump, we interviewed a few of them, small group, right? They saw it. And that is more of what we need. If we can't admit we are wrong, we end up stuck and trapped in this loop of mistakes that only deepens the divide. If we can get beyond that, it would be a very good thing for American politics.